Okay. Before we begin, I want to make something clear. I have always wanted to believe Bob Lazar, and in many ways, I still do. I have always found Bob's story compelling. Like many of you, I want it to be true. I still wrestle with parts of it that are difficult to dismiss outright. But we're living in a time now where former intelligence officials are testifying under oath about crash retrieval programs, congressional hearings are happening, and disclosure has become a mainstream conversation. Hell, former presidents are outwardly admitting aliens are real. And yet, the man who claimed in 1989 that he worked on reverse engineering alien craft at a site called S4 is nowhere in that theater. Tonight is absolutely not an attack. It's not a debunking, nor is it an endorsement. It's something harder. It's a fair look at what holds up, what remains unverified, and why, in this age of disclosure, Bob Lazar is notably absent. I'm Eric Slodgy, and this is Uncomfortable. In May of 1989, investigative reporter George Knapp aired a segment on KLAS TV in Las Vegas featuring a man whose identity was initially concealed. He called himself Dennis. That man was Bob Lazar. Shortly after, Lazar revealed his identity publicly and made a series of claims that would permanently alter the UFO conversation for decades. He had stated that he worked at a site south of Groom Lake, not the main installation commonly known as Area 51, but a separate facility he referred to as S4. According to Lazar, this facility housed up to 9 craft of non-human origin. He claimed he was hired to help reverse engineer a propulsion system powered by what he described at the time as Element 115. At the time, in 1989, Element 115 had not been synthesized. That fact alone became one of the early pillars supporting his credibility. However, Element 115 was officially synthesized in 2003 at the Joint Institute for Nuclear Research in Dubna, Russia. Later, it was named Moscovium. The isotope created was highly unstable and decayed in milliseconds. Lazar has maintained that the version these craft used was a stable isotope of element 115. No stable isotope of element 115 has ever been confirmed. And this is where the divide begins. Lazar claimed he held degrees from MIT and Caltech. Investigations by journalists found no academic records confirming his attendance. Bob would later say that his records had been erased. Skeptics point out that erasing every trace of Lazar, be it classmates, professors, yearbooks, would be extraordinarily difficult. Supporters countered that classified programs have erased records before, and there seems to be a pretty decent amount of evidence that supports that. So what's verifiable? Lazar did work at Los Alamos National Laboratory, though apparently as a contractor through Kirk Mayer, not directly as a physicist on the payroll. There are newspaper clippings placing him in Los Alamos during that time period. That's not in dispute. What remains disputed is the depth and the nature of his scientific credentials. Lazar had claimed that his name appeared in an S4 personal directory during the time he was working there. There has been no publicly produced document confirming the existence of an S4 facility directory listing him as employed there. There is no verifiable government document confirming S4's operational status as described by Lazar. That doesn't prove that it doesn't exist, but it means the claim remains unverified. Unverified is not proven false, but unverified is not proven true. Lazar later described a specific access device used at S4, a hand geometry scanner that measured bone length and structure. Years later, footage surfaced of a device used at other secure facilities that appeared visually similar to what Lazar had described. The device is commonly referred to as an Identimat 2000 hand geometry scanner. It was manufactured in the 1970s and 80s and used at secure government installations. Photographs of this device truly exist. The scanner Lazar described was not futuristic. It was real, documented piece of access control hardware. Supporters argue that this supports his account. Skeptics note that hand geometry scanners were not secret technology. They were commercially manufactured. So again, we're left with what? Was he describing something obscure or something available to someone familiar with government facilities? And that kind of brings us to a modern point of tension. Since the 2017 New York Times article that revealed the Pentagon's Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, ATIP, since public congressional hearings, since whistleblowers like David Grush have testified under oath about alleged crash retrieval programs and the recovery of non-human biologics, Bob Lazar has not appeared in a single formal government proceeding. He has not testified under oath before Congress. He has not inserted himself into modern disclosure efforts in any official capacity. He has appeared on podcasts. He has participated in documentaries, but he has not stood before lawmakers. This raises a legitimate question. If his claims were accurate, why has he not been called? Is it because his claims cannot be substantiated? Is it because his presence would likely complicate credibility? Or is it because he's seen as outside the formal chain of custody for the new modern departmental claims? We have no verified answer, only his absence. And unfortunately, absence creates a space for interpretation. Now let's slow down here a little bit, because absence does not automatically equal discrediting. There are several legitimate, rational possibilities that could explain why Bob Lazar has not appeared in formal congressional hearings or sworn whistleblower proceedings, even if we remove sensationalism from the equation. The current disclosure framework, including protected whistleblower channels, largely applies to individuals who are recently employed within active intelligence structures or still operating inside classified systems. Lazar's claims date back to the late 1980s. He's not been part of intelligence or defense apparatus for decades. If crash retrieval programs exist in classified compartments today, they would likely operate under entirely different organizational structures than whatever may have existed in 1988 or 89. Even if Lazar believed what he experienced was real, he may not possess the kind of actionable or current information relevant to modern oversight agencies. Congress tends to prioritize current knowledge, not historical allegations without documentation. We saw this firsthand in the congressional hearings. Congressional hearings require more than a narrative consistency. They require corroborating documentation, classified access verification, supporting witnesses, paper trails. Lazar has never been able to publicly produce employment records from S4, pay stubs, clearance documents, or coworker testimony confirming his role at S4. If lawmakers were to call him in to testify, they would likely require documentation that is not surfaced publicly, documentation that may literally have been scrubbed as he went public with his claims. That doesn't mean that such documentation never existed, but it does mean that without it, he would enter into a hearing already positioned as very controversial. And congressional committees tend to avoid witnesses who could undermine perceived credibility of broader testimony. It is also possible, and this is not accusatory, just analytical, that lawmakers and intelligence officials see Lazar as part of a prior era of UFO disclosure. The 1990s and early 2000s were saturated with fringe narratives, hoaxes, misinformation, and legitimate mystery all mixed together. Modern disclosure efforts have been carefully framed around military pilot encounters, radar data, and raw multi-platform sensor cooperation. Lazar's story involves reverse engineering alien craft, a stable Element 115, hidden underground hangars. These are a significant leap beyond just unidentified objects in airspace. Bringing Lazar into formal proceedings might shift the tone from cautious investigation to full crash retrieval territory, something officials obviously are not prepared to publicly validate. If Lazar testified under oath today, one of two things could happen. Either he reaffirms his story under penalty of perjury, or he adjusts the claims or retracts elements of it. If he reaffirms and records contradict him, that may lead to legal issues. If he retracts, it damages decades of his narrative and its consistency. Remaining outside the formal proceedings protects him from both scenarios. Now, this doesn't imply guilt. It reflects risk management on his part. Many individuals in many contexts avoid sworn testimony simply because the legal stakes are too high. I plead the fifth. It's also reasonable to consider a human factor. Lazar has lived under public scrutiny for more than 35 years. He's faced intense skepticism, personal attacks, federal investigations of his businesses. He may simply have no desire to re-enter that storm in any capacity. Not every figure seeks the spotlight indefinitely. Remaining on podcasts where conversations are long form and controlled may feel safer to him, more manageable. We've learned that in classified environments, compartmentalization is standard. We've heard this time and time again. If Lazar's claims are partially accurate, but limited in scope, it's possible he was exposed to a very narrow slice of the program. He did not have full operational awareness, and he's said as much. And modern crash retrieval efforts, we're told they exist, most certainly operate under entirely different leaderships and structures. That could surely explain both his consistency about his past and his current absence in the disclosure effort. And then we must acknowledge the possibility that he is absent because his claims do not withstand formal scrutiny, that agencies or departments who have reviewed his claims would not find enough to corroborate or warrant testimony. That possibility is always on the table. And this, a balanced analysis of that, demands it. So where does this leave us? With something far more nuanced than, why hasn't he testified? Absence alone cannot confirm deception. Absence also cannot confirm validation. It just exists in silence, and silence is often where the truth or the illusion of patiently sits. Let's take a quick break here. If you've had an uncomfortable experience and you'd like to have it shared here on the show, reach out to me at contact.uncomfortable@gmail.com. If you think these topics deserve serious discussion and you like what you've seen so far, subscribe here on YouTube. And if you're listening to us on audio platforms, a 5-star review helps more than you realize. Now let's get back to it. There have been documented searches of properties associated with Lazar. In 2017, federal agents conducted a search at United Nuclear Scientific, Lazar's business in Michigan, reportedly connected to an investigation involving the sale of chemicals related to a poisoning in a case in another state. Authorities stated the search was not related to any kind of extraterrestrial material or samples of element 115. There is no publicly released evidence confirming that claim. The official explanation given by authorities, they tied the search to a homicide investigation involving thallium, a highly toxic, soft, silvery white metal used in electronics, semiconductors, special glass manufacturing, and previously as rat poison. So for clarity, a federal search absolutely occurred. The stated reason was chemical investigation related. The off-world connection remains an assertion strictly by Lazar. No official documentation has linked the raid to any kind of UFO materials. Here's what makes Lazar uniquely polarizing. He has never significantly altered his core story in over 3 decades. The propulsion description, gravity amplification, waveguides, descriptions of the reactor itself. It remains consistent. Consistent as hell. Consistency strengthens perceived credibility. Yet no physical evidence has emerged. No documents have surfaced. No corroborating insiders have publicly verified working alongside him at S4. Modern whistleblowers describe crash retrieval programs. None publicly cite Lazar as ever being involved with reverse engineering. Now we live in a time when the Pentagon has acknowledged unidentified anomalous phenomenon. Congress has passed whistleblower protections. Former intelligence officials have testified under oath. And still, Bob Lazar stands outside that formal framework, neither embraced nor formally debunked by any government declaration, just existing in parallel. And that might be the most unusual part. He has never been officially charged with leaking national secrets. He has never been prosecuted for fabricating classified access. If his story was entirely fabricated and dangerous, one might expect some kind of actionable recourse. If it were entirely accurate, we might expect some kind of acknowledgement. Instead, there has been silence, and it's a complicated silence. We have a man who stepped forward in 1989 and made claims that reshaped UFO culture. Some elements of his story align with real technology. Some elements remain scientifically unverified. Some aspects of his background are documented. Others remain disputed. He predicted element 115 well before it was synthesized, but the isotope produced did not ultimately match his description. He described a hand scanner that was real, but it was not classified. It's not secret technology. He claims directory listings that have not been produced, others corroborating his claim of the listing, but all by second and third-hand stories. He has been searched by federal agents, but for reasons officially unrelated to ET material. He has remained incredibly consistent with his narrative. And now, in this age of formal disclosure, he is most notably absent, not having been exposed, not having been validated, just absent, which forces the honest observer to sit with this. We cannot confirm his story. We cannot conclusively disprove any component of it either. So we are left with what may be the most uncomfortable position of all, uncertainty. And perhaps that's fitting, because uncertainty is where this entire story has lived for decades. If you enjoyed this breakdown, if you appreciate discussions that avoid sensationalism and stay anchored in verifiable context, please subscribe and share this episode. If you've had an experience of your own, something that still lingers, something that still unsettles, you know where to find me. Until next time, stay curious and stay uncomfortable.